afternoon, everyone. I could hear only 5 people. What happened to the rest? Did we have a lunch, yes or no? Good afternoon. It's much better. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you all had a chance to explore the floor and connect over lunch. Our next session is one for everyone working or watching the beauty and personal care space. This session is titled From Ashwagandha to Exosomes, the new language of Indian BPC. India has long understood what works in beauty. The challenge today is proving it, protecting it, and positioning it for a global consumer who expects both clinical rigor and cultural authenticity. This session explores how founders can combine India's formulation heritage with advanced biotech actives while maintaining scientific credibility. A timely conversation with the right voices in the room. Introducing our panel, our moderator for this session, we have Mr. Varun Varma, Principal at Fireside Ventures, one of the most active investors in Indian consumer brand ecosystem. Come on. Joining him, we have a panelist, founder and CEO of Earth Rhythm, Ms. Harini Sivakumar. Can we welcome her with a huge round of applause? Next, we have founder of Fae Beauty, Ms. Karishma Kewalramani. A warm welcome to her. Joining them, we have the Managing Director of Cimera Care Private Limited, Ms. Nikita Kukreja. A warm welcome to Nikita. We have co-founder of Hitech Formulations Private Limited, Mr. Jaspreet Singh Gulati. A warm welcome. And Vice President Marketing Owned Brands at Nykaa, Ms. Shah. A warm welcome to Pearl. Varun, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. Thank you to all the panelists for doing this as well, and to CMPL for hosting us. Before I jump into the questions with the panelists, I just thought I'd set some context on what we'd cover today, right? So if you look at the beauty personal care market today, it's about $22 billion in size, growing phenomenally at about 10 to 12% every year, estimated to be $30 billion very, very soon. But it's riddled with all sorts of paradoxes, right? On one hand, you have a market that's growing fast, yet every founder and investor will tell you that it's full of clutter. This is not a good time to be building in beauty. On one hand, we are the most ancient beauty market in the world. We've been using cumin to brighten our skin since time immemorial. However, we are still amongst the fastest markets to adopt things like niacinamide for brightening. We have, on one hand, people will tell you natural Ayurvedic brands are dying, but whether that's SPEAQ or Estee Lauder or Imami, everyone's going and buying a new Ayurvedic brand every day. So hopefully through this panel, we try to answer some or make sense of some of these paradoxes in terms of what's happening in the market as far as the ingredients grow. We have a great mix of folks who run brands, folks who run brands and a very large platform, as well as folks who are on the manufacturing and formulation side. So I'll start with Harini. So welcome, Harini. Obviously as Earth Rhythm, if you look at what you're building, you sit very much at the intersection, at least from a product perspective, of natural and science, right? Every product, at least when I was going through your website, there was something natural, something scientific. And in a world where, you're hearing more and more that Ayurveda is becoming outdated, we were just talking about how the Ayurveda experience and their own experience in India. What would you say from a customer perspective? What is the customer looking for? Where does the opportunity exist? Is Ayurveda really dying? Help us make sense of it.
I think it's been a journey, both for brand as well as for consumers. There was a time, I think, 10 years down the line before, people really liked natural ingredients, and then came the clean beauty wave. With the clean beauty wave, people started eliminating sulfates, parabens, they went obsessed about it. But it didn't really catch up because with the young consumers today, bringing efficacy is everything to them. So then how do we solve for it? From the brand's perspective, I think today what we have done is we sit at an intersection, like you said, right? We do have natural ingredients that can build credibility and trust. The familiarity comes from that ingredient. Let's say turmeric, the one that you were saying, right? It's a simple ingredient. Consumers can immediately relate to what turmeric can do to their skin. But can it give the faster results that consumers are looking for today? No. So we would combine that with, say, vitamin C or niacinamide, and then we would deliver it to the consumers. Now, it's about how you look at the formulation, right? What is the function of that ingredient in the formulation and how we deliver it to the consumers? So that's how we've actually traveled down the lane. We started with natural ingredients, and then we touched on clean beauty, and today we ride with the market. We deliver what the consumers need, but staying at the core of what we actually stand for. I think from a brand's perspective, that's how we look at it. When you look at core formulation, there's a lot more that goes into it. I mean, Jaspreet will be much better to answer on this, but from my knowledge, you really need to understand that two ingredients don't cancel out each other. A chemical ingredient or, say, an active ingredient should not cancel out the natural ingredient, and vice versa. So we really need to ensure the formulation can deliver both of these to the consumer. So that's how we've actually come down the lane of mixing both together. But truth be told, that consumers today, they want faster results. They want to really buy a product by understanding what it can deliver to them. They no longer want to simply see nomenclatures like, say, brightening, anti-aging. They really want to go in depth of the product to understand what is really giving me that anti-aging effect in this product. What is causing brightening for me in this product? Is it the right thing for me? So when consumers are open to actually seeing that much amount of information, they're able to take it. We are also evolving along with them and giving them what they want.
Awesome. Thank you. Pearl, I'll come to you next. Harini mentioned what the customer wants, right? I think one thing that we're seeing definitively is the customer is premiumizing at a space that is unprecedented, especially when it comes to beauty personal care. Obviously, Nykaa, the platform that you're a part of, has ridden that wave supremely well, and you're leading the charge with many of the brands that they're building. How do you lean into that trend on premiumization, and while taking advantage of this whole ingredient trend that's also happening? Where do these worlds meet? How do they feed into each other?
To first figure this out. Does this work?
Bring it closer. I think you just need to hold it closer.
Oh, okay. Great. So I think the consumer is definitely premiumizing, and I think social media has had a huge role to play, as have, incomes going up. Like, there's a lot more accessibility to a lot of knowledge and trends, and like the Korean beauty, for example, has become democratized in a strange way. So I don't think premiumization is only for a certain affluent set, but I think every consumer at every step of the way, regardless of price sensitivity, is looking for premium products, and which is why you also have FMCG companies today talking of premiumization. So I don't think premiumization is just a price thing, but premiumization is a lever which brands are using to really offer customers a little bit more than what was a base product. And then, of course, I think ingredients as well play a huge role, right? Like, today, everyone, while Exosomes may be a very niche product, but they're very quickly getting democratized. I think so premiumization can come through highly evolved ingredient formats, but also I think packaging has a massive role to play in our industry, in how premium the consumer kind of perceives the product to be. The more special the packaging, the more there is that perception. Two is obviously the efficacy of the formulation has to be beautiful, as does the sensory. And all of this requires premiumization. So I'm seeing that premiumization is actually democratic and no longer a niche, so to say.
All right. And, when there are so many ingredient trends, there's PDRN, there's stem cells, there's exosomes, what have you. How do you decide, what ingredient trend to ride and play along from a premium perspective?
So I would say at the core of it, you have to come back to brand, right? And to who our consumer is. So does the brand allow for, like, does the brand story allow for this, right? Like, because it doesn't make sense, for example, if it's a natural Ayurvedic ingredient, for them to randomly put in something that is a very, very exceptional scientific ingredient wouldn't make sense. But for example, if you have something, say a golden PDRN, which is a turmeric extract, and then that goes into Ayurveda, that still makes sense. Or like, we have to also know our market, our customer. In India, we're very sensitive to vegan formulations, for example. PDRN is typically an animal extract. So then how do you take that ingredient and make it relevant to your geography, to your market? And two, does that ingredient, again, suit our climatic conditions, right? Like collagen, for example, can be really heavy, and I'm sure Jaspreet, Nikita will have a lot more insights on that, but also it needs to be an ingredient or a formulation that is suitable to our environment. Like retinol is not recommended for everyone, at different stages of your skin journey. So I think it's all about choice making, but at the core of it, it comes down to what your brand stands for, who your brand is talking to, and where in the regime for the consumer and which area it's selling.
Awesome. Thank you. Karishma, I'll come to you next. You're building Faye, which is a cosmetic brand for skin of color. How does the ingredient play fit in there, right? How do you think about it? Would love. And also, then how do you mix and match that with the sensorial side, the format side, and also this whole trend on skinification of cosmetics, right? There's so much happening. Like, how do you decide where you play and what's your right to win?
So at Faye, as the company and the brand has evolved, the realization that today consumers want so much more out of their color cosmetics than just color is a very clear one. So with the skinification angle, as you said, every single one of our products today has a skinification angle. So you're not just going to get a lipstick that looks good, but one that also hydrates. But the way we try to take it forward is not just an ingredient play, but an efficacy play. So now we're going into claim verification. So we're currently, for example, building a lip oil, and we're testing to figure out how many hours of hydration that oil can give after X hours of wearing. So there is this intersection of enhancement and efficacy that we're sort of playing in, and that's our product philosophy going forward as well. With regards to texture or sensorial, that in color cosmetics at least is less to do with efficacy of ingredients, but more innovation. So for example, how can I think about a texture that has typically been matte and turn it around and make it squishy, or make it glossy, or make it high shine, or make it less shine? So that is something that we're constantly playing with, because with color cosmetics, we're beginning to see that, at least in India, there is the ability to push the boundary much more than what we've seen in the past, specifically when it comes to texture and sensorial. So we're trying to approach it 360 degrees with, enhancement first, then efficacy, and then texture. That's how we're looking at it.
And from a customer perspective, what's still the main driver of their purchase? Because at the top, they're buying cosmetic. It has the added benefit, and then you said it's supplemented by the format. How do they measure that the second layer, like the third layer is obviously, it's attractive and it stimulates you when you look at it.
Right.
But and at the top, I imagine they're choosing something based on a color or some format of that nature. How much importance are they paying to that benefit, and how do they measure it?
So I think I'd go back to also what Pearl said, right? Which is the way a product looks today has a lot of value in terms of a consumer's decision-making process. So the packaging is also something that's super important. But in terms of how does the consumer decide, in color, it's always going to be enhancement first, which is how did this model, hypothetically, his lips look before wearing the product, and now how is it looking after? And the way they measure it is now through clinical claims. So they'll expect a brand to say X% improvement in Y feature over Y time. And that's the way they'll probably make their decision-making process.
Got it. Thank you. I'll move over to Jaspreet and Nikita now to get the manufacturing and formulation side perspective. So, I think maybe 5 years ago, it used to take 5 years to get a global trend to come to India. Now it's probably 5 days, right? And as formulators and manufacturers, you all need to be ahead of the curve in investing in the science of a certain product, or making it affordable and accessible and stable, shelf stable. So maybe Jaspreet, if you can start by talking about how do you go about tracing the world in terms of what's happening, where do you start then deciding where do I invest? And how much of the innovation is led by you versus led by the brands? Are brands coming to you and telling you PDRN is blowing over? If you go to exploringtopics.com today, PDRN is the second biggest trend. And are they coming and telling you, I want PDRN? Or are you telling brands that, you know what, PDRN is exploding, it's time for you to use it?
Very interesting, Varun, but I'll talk about it from a different lens before I actually answer this question. Think from a consumer standpoint. We know consumers are looking at trends. We know consumers are looking at packaging. Pearl talked about premiumization. You talked about packaging. Why would a consumer pay a premium? Why would somebody want a better product? What are we solving for? Why would I chase a trend? Primarily, it is because of the promise. Either I need a product which is more efficacious or safer. Third, more sustainable or more personalized to me. So if I have it has to be either of them to be, if it doesn't solve for either of them, and we try and if we go and catch a trend, we're probably on the wrong bus. Trends will come and go. How we identify trends and how we, and you said, how do you gauge what to invest in? We see, if you're talking about an exosome trend, what is it solving for? Does it solve a problem better? And we try and figure if this trend is going to be sustainable. Where there are many brands who would come to us and ask us to catch the trend very early, somehow we are not the right people for that. How we look at, in fact, we are the last ones to catch on the trend bus. We look at fundamentals. We look at products, trends which can stay for a longer time. We invest in we invest time. We invest a lot of R&D efforts. Usually for us to catch on to a new trend is like a year-long process or a year-and-a-half-long process. And by then, we see half of the trends are already lost. So it's best that we understand why is it that some celebrity is talking about it, or is it solving a real problem? And that's the test for us. That's the litmus test for us. If we can find out that if the exosomes are really solving, so for example, now exosome, we have it as a topic. If it's really solving for delivery of, now how I understand exosome is solving for delivery of peptides, which are not easily deliverable otherwise. And that's the reason you see, you don't have a lot of peptide-based products in India. But if exosome as a delivery system can solve for delivery of peptides, we're happy to invest. We've been on the exosome, lab-engineered exosome journey for the last 3 years now. We will invest in that trend in a longer term only if we think it's really solving one of those problems: efficacy, safety, sustainability, or personalization.
Awesome. Pearl, I'm just going to take that question to you. How do you decide what trend is worth, putting your weight behind?
So I think, we use a lot of parameters, but I think I'm going to take a step back here to say that just because something is a trend, we can't deliver it the next day. Because, the one thing we're never going to compromise on is, for example, the safety of the formulation. Or it's not like we pick up something and we put it out in the market. It takes us, a significant amount of time and development. And so therefore, as product creators and crafters, I think it becomes really important for us to develop the muscle to spot a trend, almost like 12 to 16 months before it actually becomes a trend. And there are multiple facets that we use. For us, I think the number one is obviously fairs like this, that we travel to globally, building very deep vendor relationships where we're able to meet a lot. We're also observing a lot of lifestyle cues. Like I'm sure everyone's seeing that matcha is a massive trend, and it's not just a beverage trend, but it's made its way into everything from masks to moisturizers. And so therefore, I think our roles as marketeers is also very much to keep a pulse on what's happening in the world around us. And I think that's something we're constantly on top of outside of, your typical forecasting tools and so on. It's no longer just about social listening. I think by the time it hits social media and it hits the retailer platforms in terms of search trends, it's already there's
Halfway to
5
death.
guys doing it, right? So then if I start my process then, I'm already 1 year too late. So I think for us, just developing that muscle and that instinct becomes really, really important, and collecting information from various sources becomes critical.
Got it. Thank you. Very interesting. Nikita, I'll come to you. I think investors are notorious for putting pressure on startups that they invest in and grow, get product out faster. And I imagine the fallout of that is founders come to you and tell you, I need this product in 2 months at this price point with this gross margin, which I imagine is easier said than done. How do you deal with brands like this? And what's your advice to founders, brands who are also trying to build? How should they think about product development? How should they think about working with manufacturers like yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. What you've asked is like everyday story. Every second call is related to this. We're not able to solve it because they want something within 60 days, 90 days, 30 days for that matter. We meet a lot of clients who would walk in and the simple answer would be, we need to launch it on Diwali. But we are already sitting in like September. So that's practically not possible. It does take a lot to explain this, that if I have to gather 3-4 ingredients or packing material, which will take 45 to 65 days, and then funnily, if they think if we have all of that category inside in our plant, it's 2-day game, we will manufacture it and it will be out. And the moment you say yes to it, then all the testing parameters come into the picture. So, on and all, to answer this question, it is struggleful. I'm sure, like Sir would agree with that. It's a journey. I understand that somebody is coming, and sometimes we can actually do it within 30 days also, within 60 days also. It's completely depend on what kind of formulation, what kind of packaging you guys are asking for. It is possible, but honestly, how much you love your brand and your baby, your manufacturer understands that equally. So somewhere there has to be a sweet balance of listening to the manufacturer also, and not push us to a point that we end up and say, okay, we will do it. We try not to. We have learned to say no within our 4-5 years of our journey. Like, if it's not possible in so many days, we will, now be honest about it, that, sir, it's not possible, or whatever, for whatever reasons. If that idea of that brand took 3 months in your head and 2 more months to practically put it on table, then we as manufacturer also need 60 days to actually deliver that to you. Keeping all the safety parameters and compliance in mind, 60 days is what exactly any manufacturer should take and deserves.
Got it. We should all make a mental note. Sorry.
We've also learned the hard way. It's very difficult to convince a brand, and especially backed by an investor like yours, to tell them, wait, that's not something you can do, right? You guys are after them, they're after us.
We're not that bad.
No, but what we figured out is we've categorized new product manufacturing into 3 categories. So we built a repository of formulations which we've tested for robustness, for efficacy, and we call them our repository formula. So there's a bank. So the first model that we do is you take one from the bank right away. We've done enough time. There's enough work that has already been done on that. And the stabilities are all proven for. The second is tweak. You take the take and tweak it your way for the brand, if you want to call it some way. And the third is if you really want something and you sincerely want to build something very different, which we may not have preempted, so you get into the build category. So take, tweak, and build. So if it's a build, you better have a minimum of 9 to 12 months period.
Yes.
So that's something we're very clear. And when we work with a lot of pharmaceutical guys, we get a time of around 12 to 18 months for a new product development. But yeah, I think that understanding of if you're building, you need this kind of time. If your take or tweak could be easier, solves for a lot of problems when it comes.
Thank you. Karishma, I remember when I met you the first time, we spoke about, and you gave me a lesson in what it takes to build a cosmetics brand. And one of the things I remember walking away with was that if you're a cosmetics brand, you need to be launching a product every month, right? Like just to stay relevant and fresh and give new product to the consumer and keep them excited, especially in the cosmetics category, right? So in a category where, you know, NPD cycles or your NPD process needs to work at rocket fuel, with rocket fuel, what are some of the practices that you've developed over time that have allowed you to keep up that pace and have worked well for you?
My NPD lead is sitting right here, and she'll probably be chuckling as I'm answering this, but planning. I think when we started the company, we were maybe working at a 6-month timeline. Today, my NPD pipeline is locked for the next 18 months, which means what Pearl said, it becomes really important. That muscle of figuring out what trend is going to hit India at what time and being ahead of that curve becomes really, really important. So, understanding globally what's happening and then how that will translate in the Indian ecosystem is really important. And I think what both of you said is absolutely correct, which is you can't hack the time, right? What ends up happening when you hack the time is unstable formulations. You'll launch it in 60 days and you'll pat yourself on the back and your investors will be happy, but then your customers will be pissed because you gave them something that's splitting over time or that's not shelf stable. So as much as pressure we put on the revenue side of things for NPD, we have to realize that it is something that cannot be hacked beyond a point. So that's what we just work 18 months in advance. That's the trick now.
And how long did it take you to get here, like to build a
5
process?
years.
5 years. Got it.
I think we were just struggling to get there for the longest time, and at the 5th year we said, okay, now we have the ability to start working this much in advance, and it still doesn't feel like enough sometimes.
I think that's the kind of time you need to get to sanity as for a brand, for a startup. All of us are, I mean, startup founders are always, they have a lot of things on their mind. With 5-6 years, and you get to a phase where you also understand that now launching every 3 months is not necessary.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
also. I think when I met you, that was important. And now that we've gotten a certain amount of critical momentum, we've actually realized that launching as frequently is working against the brand, because you're occupying share of voice for one brand with now 100 launches. How much will a consumer actually absorb? Instead, I'd rather spend that money on that one hero and go deep.
Yeah.
So now we've actually spread out our launches and given our team more time to launch.
Got it. Harini, you know, I just want to go back to the conversation we were having outside about, amongst many things, the one we spoke about educating customers, right? You're talking about how molecule size and penetration and the Daltons, which is the size of the molecule, and you need to be under a certain size to actually build an efficacious product. So in light of that, you know, as someone who is deeply passionate about product, as a brand, how do you communicate? Like, you know, how do you educate? Because it's very expensive to educate, especially if you're the only one screaming. And if you're not the only one screaming, then you need to find a way to stand out when everyone's screaming the same things. Like, how much does customer education matter at a product level? How do you go about doing that? How easy / difficult has it been for you? And what are some of your key learnings?
I think we've come a long way doing that again. I think initially it was very difficult, right? I think most manufacturers here will agree with me that every ingredient that is there out in the market, you will find for probably at 1,000 rupees per kg to all the way to 1 lakh per kg also. But the ingredient purity, the efficacy matters on the research that is done, the extraction process. There's so much more the ingredient that goes into it, what the cost comes out for the particular ingredient, right? Now, for us, sitting there, we've struggled hard trying to, you know, explain to consumers. Initially, it was tough. We use social media, of course, that's the easiest form. We started educating consumers, but one brand that actually took it to another level was Minimalist. Let's be honest about it, right? When they came out, they were obsessed with ingredients, right? Now, one mistake which I'll quote, which we did wrong where Minimalist did right, was while you're obsessing with ingredients, stay true to it. Right? Don't divert and don't deviate and go into two other things together, because then consumers don't know which one to trust, whether it's your ingredient story or whether it's your, you know, the core philosophy that you stand for. So you can't have best of both worlds, right? You have to stand by one and then go true to it. And then consumers start believing that, okay, they're obsessed with ingredients, I get it. So let me, if I really like the philosophy which they're trying to preach, let me start looking closely into what they're delivering. That's how strong brands are built today in the market. For Earth Rhythm, I think we've come a long way. We were actually in that space where do we go left or right, and we tried staying in the middle. And we actually kind of lost a lot more customers doing that because we didn't choose a clear path, right? In that sense, I feel that today consumers, the best way they learn about ingredients is through social media, number one, through influencers, right or wrong. Let's be honest, influencers play a huge role, whether they learn right, like we were talking about this emoline, right? Whether it's right or wrong, they learn it through influencers. That's the number two. Number three, I think one big strategy brands do is actually putting up the manufacturer who actually brought that particular ingredient. I think Minimalist again was the first one to do it. If you remember, they started mentioning like niacinamide sourced from DSM Pharma. They would write that on their packaging. And why would they do that? Because niacinamide can be sourced at a much lower cost from China. And as against niacinamide sourced from DSM could be like probably 5 times more expensive. Now the cost could, the cost of making that particular niacinamide serum using this ingredient versus that ingredient, the cost is, probably poles apart. And to make the consumer understand that the quality of this one is way, way expensive because the amount of research that has gone into actually, proving that this particular active ingredient is efficacious and it will give you the, results that you're looking for. I think that journey, it's probably today, I would say that consumers still are at an intersection today. They're still not fully seen the power of, unlock of, what real ingredients could do to them. At least Indian market is such that today that consumers today really, they are price sensitive. Let's be honest about it. Whatever said and done, even if there's an efficacious product, today's consumer are price sensitive. And if you are going to charge them anything more than 700 or 1,000 rupees, they would think twice as to why I would choose this product. So I think the best way that we as brands follow is we choose the right partner to deliver that message to the consumer today, right? For example, if we're talking about a very, very strong active ingredient, we would choose the right person to actually take that message across to the consumers. We would not want a fashion influencer talking about an active ingredient like, say, Exosome, right? We would choose the right partner to deliver that information to the consumers. And I think we have learned that over a period of time as to what strategy works in conveying the right message to the consumers.
Awesome. Thank you. Jaspreet and Nikita, I'll come back to you, just taking on from what Harini spoke about. Jaspreet, we were talking about the fact that like in India, there's very little R&D that happens, right? And I mean, this is a topic in all of the popular media today about 0.6% of GDP, which is way below global averages. And I imagine it's no different here, even though we have a very strong manufacturing ecosystem. So in light of that, how do you see that changing? How do you see that evolving? There's 3% niacinamide, 5% niacinamide. Like, what's the difference between all of this? Are we just like becoming, like we became the pharmacy of the world where we provided low-cost manufacturing? Is that what's happening from a manufacturing perspective? Will we ever change to do more value additive stuff? And how will that change come about?
So 2 parts of your question. One, what is different? So 3%, 5% and a clutter in the market, what is different from one formulation to the other? To answer that, part of it Harini did answer. I give a simple example of making a cup of tea, right? If you look at a cup of tea, all it has is water, milk. If you read the ingredient list, it's water, tea leaves, cured tea leaves, milk, sugar, that's it. But every tea would taste different. And it starts from the point on the tea leaves, where did you source your leaves from? And when it comes to ingredients, what is most important and why we pay more for better ingredients is the purity of the ingredients. Because most of the times you see niacinamide is the niacinamide, but the niacin as an impurity can cause havoc for your skin. And to keep that low, you buy a better grade. So one is choosing the right ingredients. Second, looking at whether that ingredient is soluble. Soluble in the sense if we've had a formulation, we put the ingredient, we've claimed the ingredient, but many a times we notice the ingredient is not even, they're microcrystals, the ingredient has not even gone in the formulation, leave alone it will go in the skin. Third, so choosing the ingredient, then we come to solubility. The third is permeability. Even if it's soluble, will it go through my skin to the desired skin layer? Our skin is designed to keep things out, not take things in. It's a protective layer. I have to make sure that the product is permeable. It permeates through the skin to act. And the last important point is stability. And very small, I know we're running out of time, but most skincare actives are antioxidants. The stronger the antioxidant, the stronger the active. Talk about retinol, vitamin C, kojic acid, all these actives are antioxidants. And what they intend to do is, when we put them on our skin, they should oxidize before our skin DNA or other cell components get oxidized. And the more powerful antioxidant, it's better for your skin because it doesn't allow your skin cells to get oxidized. But the problem is, you have put that ingredient in the formulation, it is so reactive, because it's a great antioxidant, it will oxidize in the bottle itself. How do you make sure by the time the consumer actually receives the product, uses it, it still has the same potency that was there when you manufactured it? We are talking about oxidation of colors. We have it in our own way when it comes to ingredients, right? So this is where I say research and development has to be done. That's the scientific integrity part of one formulation that's sure. When it comes to cosmetics, this is still an emerging field. We saw a lot of clutter pre-COVID when 2018-19 was the time when all the D2C brands started coming up. Post-COVID, we had a great wave of, but the better thing is that the market is only maturing now, and you will see a lot of, and consumers getting educated. You're talking science to them, you're talking ingredients. So it's only a matter of time when we evolve to a state where we understand that these little things are more important than the ingredients. It's not the ingredient, it's the whole system which is the formulation and which is actually going to be working for me. And I think we're going in the right direction. Take it like a trend. Manufacturers, researchers will have to follow. If the consumers ask for it, when they start becoming, and that's what they're paying a premium for, to the Korean players, to the, why is K-beauty why are we buying premium beauty? Because we have some bit of authority and trust that maybe they're doing this for us, which some of the other Indian counterparts may not be doing. If we catch up to that, if that's a need, we have to catch up. And once we catch up, I think Indian brands, it's only a matter of time when we actually become, in terms of scientific talent, in terms of acumen, in terms of resources, we are far better off than many European counterparts for that matter. It's just that need has to hit hard onto us to understand and then start being very meticulous about it.
Got it. I'll just ask Nikita last question before we throw it open to the audience for questions. Every product now is coming out with lots of claims. Use this for 3 weeks and acne reduces by 70% and fine lines disappear suddenly. How accurate are these claims? How do brands, how does one go about, actually procuring these claims and all the claims that are out there in the market today? How much should we believe or not believe of what we read?
So as Sir said, there are two stories to this question because we are doing third-party manufacturing. So it's hybrid. We do our own R&D, we have our own facility, and where we are formulating any sort of solution where we are giving claims, and then we do a full homework on it, whether, it's n number of time of testing, whether on the ingredient or on the final product. Mostly, majority of it works on the ingredient study because final products, let's say I make 100 formulations, I know that maybe 70 of them will get picked. And getting some sort of testing done on the final product is way more expensive. So we start at the basic level of only using ingredients that come with certain sort of claims. That's when a formulation that we're giving, it could come up with claims, whether it's moisturization, whether it's for 78 hours, 48 hours, depigmentation within 28 days of usage. The other side is when my client brings their own R&D, it's more like a tech for us, and because we're also sitting in the same industry, so we do understand what we're talking about. And so it starts at the basic level, that the vendor that you're procuring from, the ingredient is the most important as per now what the industry is like. Of course, with time, how we are also evolving, it's more trendy now to have testing done on the formulation rather than just sticking to the ingredients. So I think with time it's evolving. For now, it's more on hybrid mode. Whatever we pitch, we do our work, and if it's more like a tech for us that coming from our our clients, then they do their work. And whosoever now in today's time, whether it's us or our, brands like what Karishma is doing and other, you can see all over, market has evolved so much that today we do care, and it's more like we won't even dare to put a claim which is not right, because it's whosoever is trying to create a brand, I believe, comes with a lot of intention. So that the mental shift is there. It's not just cosmetic that you put. It comes with a lot of intention, and I think intention really has changed over the period of time, especially in India. So it's not like, nobody will just claim. And to make sure that claims are there, it starts at the ingredient level for now.
Awesome. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah. Can we get
Hi. Karishma, this is for you. So you mentioned that it took almost 5 years for you to, understand like there should be a hero product in that particular therapy and you should go deep. What I am thinking right now is the consumers, Indian consumers are already evolved, right? Now, if you launch and tweak some products in the existing category, then also you are we are paying for higher CAC. So why not start educating consumers from day one, because they are evolved and they know what's trending globally. So for example, rather than launching the same product in hair growth, so there are n number of brands which have Redensil. So rather than that, why don't we as a brand teach consumers that you start using hair thinning products first rather than directly entering into hair growth? I mean, why does that not happen from day one?
So I think the bottom line to remember here is that behavior changing or education requires a lot of money. So if you have that access, then you absolutely should go down that path. But it is much easier to build in a pre-existing category where knowledge is already rampant than build a category or change behavior. So what you're saying is technically correct. It just depends on what resources you have to do that.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Somesh. So if a contract manufacturer tells me that they put so and so ingredients in the formulation, as a brand just starting out, how can I test that they've actually put those ingredients in the formulation?
You want to go for it?
Yeah, very interesting question, and I don't have an answer for it. How does the consumer know? How does the end consumer know that you're putting? It comes with, so I talked about a term which said, scientific integrity. I think that's where it boils down to. You can have a lot of documents, you can have a lot of agreements and all those things in place, but at the best, find the right partner who you believe is trustworthy, and in most cases you'll find a good one. And you can test on multiple parameters, which are either physico-chemical parameters, but to go into each assay for that matter is very, very difficult. You can do it for a couple of ingredients. There are specific tests which can be run. Where you think it is most important, get those tests done. Get your HPLCs done, get your assays done. But beyond that, I think you have to find the right partner. If you're urged to ask that question, I mean, you're at the wrong place.
Thank you.
I think another way that you can actually validate is in most contract manufacturing during first initial batches, brands do send their brand team or R&D team to be there physically to check. I mean, if that's one way, but it's not a long-term plan, but that's one way that you can bypass it. That's it.
Hand the mic back. We'll take this last question. I think we're out of time. The panelists will all be around, so you can catch them and ask your questions after that.
So I just had one question for, this is directed towards Harini. With the sort of brand that you guys have, like with ingredient-led stories, where you have Ayurveda versus where you have actives, what do you feel the trend is moving towards, right? Where is the needle moving towards? What does the Indian consumer really trust and care more about in terms of like efficacy or like, Western science versus Indian Ayurveda? And how are you sort of combining it, or are you focusing on one track in either way?
Okay, so I think consumers no longer are obsessed with trends. Of course, trends come and go, but what's going to stay here long term is consumers now know how much to expect from a product. Now, if you have a product that delivers fast and is easy for them to, probably accessibility is there, obviously they would choose that product over anything else, right? One big example that I can give you on today's time and age is Indie Wild. The core is Ayurveda, right? But how have they packaged it? How are they delivering it to the consumers? People really like the fact that the whole Ayurveda concept is repackaged. I mean, the expectations over there is not that, it's going to work for me overnight. But again, they're not claiming anything of that sort. They're just saying that we're giving you a different experience, an age-old experience in today's time and world that you live in. I think that's the feeling that that brands are able to relate to real world problems today is where the market is moving to. You may be doing ingredients, you may be doing Ayurveda, that doesn't matter. How are you putting it across to consumers is what today I think where the brands are leading to.
Sorry. Thank you. I think that's all the time we have for questions. Before we wrap up, very quickly to each one of you, what's the trend that you're most excited about over the next 12 to 24 months? One line.
I'm really excited about the evolution of cushions as a concept and how it's evolving into various categories and formats and textures.
Awesome.
I'm very excited about delivery systems and how we're talking about liposomes, exosomes, and delivery systems in skincare.
Does it have to be from skincare industry only?
Anything. I mean, in the
I'm excited about when drones are going to fly us around. Like, genuinely too excited for that.
I think for me it would be texture transformation. So something that goes on in a certain texture but then sets in a different texture is interesting.
Packaging is really changing fast today. I really think that India is way behind when it comes to packaging. And I think the next couple of years, I feel that India may actually take on a lot more serious on the packaging front.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
A very, very big thank you to our moderator, Varun, and our panelists. Please do not go. Please do not leave the stage. Please, please. We have a small token of appreciation for each of you. Requesting Hazel Menezes from CMPL to please come on stage and do the honors. And can we have a huge round of applause for our panelists? Come on, give it up for them, ladies and gentlemen. To our moderator, Varun Varma. Audience, you know what you have to do. Come on. To Harini Sivakumar. I can hear 3 claps. Karishma Kewalramani. Nikita Kukreja. Jaspreet Singh Gulati. And Miss Pearl Shah. If we could all come ahead for a group photograph, please. Once again, a very, very big thank you to our panelists on stage. Thank you so much.